And joining us right now, the Rothman Orthopaedics guest line, columnist extraordinaire for Inquirer.com. And also, he wrote this little book that you might have heard of, The Rise, following Kobe Bryant and the pursuit of immortality. My man, Mike Sielski, joins us right now. What's going on, Mike?
Mark, how are you, pal? It's good to be with you.
It's great. It's great to have you back on the show. I know you were just traveling abroad quite a bit. Is it true you toured a chocolate factory in Switzerland?
That is absolutely true. My wife lived in Switzerland for 9 years when she was a kid, and we went back for a week with our kids and her parents, and we went to the Lindt Chocolate Factory, Lindt. You've probably seen the chocolate in your local supermarkets. I can tell you, you take a tour of the factory, and it is the only tour I've ever taken where I ended it 5 pounds heavier than when I started it.
I highly recommend the Heineken beer tour in Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah, the Yingling Brewing Company is now a close second to this one in my experiences of tours.
My only, other than Hershey, obviously, my only experience with the Torre Chocolate Factory was the Perugina chocolate in Italy, and they knew I was with a group from Pennsylvania. They knew I was from Pennsylvania, and they literally said, this guy came in, big, burly Italian fella, and I think he was joking, but in a very intimidating manner said, "You people from Pennsylvania, don't you tell Mr. Hershey our secrets."
Oh,
and I was like, okay, some chocolate, please. Anyway, I'm glad you had a great time with the family, man. That sounds awesome. I was enjoying my day. I was having this great time, and then I stumble across this article, Mr. Sielski. Inquirer.com. You wrote this piece, Johnny Gaudreau is great. Can he save the Flyers? Well, he's not that great, essentially. And I read the piece, and it's one of those things, Mike, that I think about, and I want Johnny Gaudreau to be here. I want somebody to be here other than John Tortorella that's more of a win now type of player. I just don't think, and especially after reading your article, the Flyers are in that type of position to really sign anybody that is in the win now category.
Yeah, that's kind of how I come down on this, Mark. Nothing against Johnny Gaudreau. He's an incredible player. Just had 115 points, a career high this past season for the Flames. But as I said in the column, he'd have to have 315 points next season for the Flyers, and the season after that, and the season after that, for them to make this signing worthwhile. They're just not anywhere close to being competitive enough for a championship, for a Stanley Cup, for a signing like this to make sense. There are steps you have to take if you are a franchise in the National Hockey League, especially in an age, and I keep saying this to Flyers fans, of a salary cap. There are steps you have to take to get to be great. And the Flyers seemingly refuse to take those steps. They keep trying to retool when what they need to do is once and for all, take a step back, take a few years, and accumulate draft picks and try to accumulate talent. Nobody likes to use the word tanking, but the way to get good in the NHL is to be bad for a long time. The Pittsburgh Penguins were bad for a while and ended up with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. The Colorado Avalanche made the playoffs 3 times in 11 years, and that led to them getting the whole slew of superstar players they have now who just led them to the Stanley Cup. Gone are the days where the Flyers are going to have an owner such as Ed Snyder who can sign the big-name free agent who's out there every single year, and the Flyers can just outspend all the other teams in the NHL. They have been a less than mediocre team since the league instituted its salary cap in 2005, and they repeatedly show that they are not interested in taking the steps a franchise needs to take to sustain success in a salary cap era.
With that being said, do you think that they do go out there and get Johnny Gaudreau?
I'd say it's about 50-50. As we talk right now, they've already bought out Oscar Lindblom to create some cap space. The big move I think they're going to have to make would be to get James Van Riemsdyk's salary off the books one way or another. The problem with that, and one of the things that I point out in the column, is that unless another team in the league decides to be really, really generous with the Flyers, Van Riemsdyk is making so much money that if another team is going to take him off the Flyers' hands, the Flyers are probably going to have to kick in some prospects or some draft capital in some kind of trade. And that defeats the whole purpose of what they ought to be doing. You're weakening the organization and the franchise as a whole by giving up these prospects and these picks in order to get Johnny Gaudreau, who's about to turn 29. It's not like he's going to, you're going to sign him to 6, 7, 8 year contract at $9 to $10 million a year under the cap. And to what end? Like, you don't have enough talent as it is, and you're going to give up this draft capital and these prospects in all likelihood to get him. It doesn't make any sense. They're making moves as if they're desperate, whether it's Chuck Fletcher desperate to keep his job, whether it's Dave Scott, the chairman of Comcast Spectacor, desperate to get fannies back in the seats in the Wells Fargo Center. And they are just not willing, it seems to me, to do the hard, tough, slow, deliberate things that you need to do to build a team in the modern NHL.
Is their goal to make us happy at all in this offseason? Because you mentioned Oscar Lindblom, who people love here in this city, and not to mention he's a pretty good hockey player too. People forget about that because of what a hero he's been off the ice, but on the ice, he's a pretty damn good hockey player. And then they go out there and they trade some picks, 3 to be exact, for Anthony DeAngelo. And he's not exactly someone that a lot of people like to cozy up next to due to his track record. He says he's a reformed man, more or less. And they could have gone out there and got a younger star for obviously better picks into Brinkett, for instance, from the Blackhawks, and they opted not to do that. So the basic question I want to ask you right now, Mike Sielski, is what the hell are the Flyers doing?
I don't know. They're framing it as retooling, but they don't seem to have much of a plan. And to be quite honest, I don't think they've had much of a plan, as I alluded to earlier, since the NHL instituted its salary cap during the 2004-2005 lockout. Quick anecdote. I remember talking to Bob Clark back when he was still the general manager. They had the press conference. The lockout had ended. There's Clarkey and Ken Hitchcock. They're coming out of the lockout. They got us out. The league has a salary cap for the first time. And Clark talked about, I've been consulting with Joe Banner with the Eagles. We're going to figure this thing out. Well, guess what? About a year later, Clark was resigning as general manager. The Flyers were firing Ken Hitchcock, and they were about to embark. They were in the middle of, I should say, maybe the worst season in their history until this past season. They have never figured the cap out. And it's gotten only worse lately because they've had this muddled approach of they're not quite breaking it all down. They're not quite going for it. They haven't been able to draft well over the last 20 years. Now they're trying to fix and plug up holes in the roster with guys like Tony DeAngelo. And as you said, they're giving up draft picks for this. Look, I think there are a number of fans out there who just want to see a competitive team, who will be happy if the Flyers compete for a playoff spot and maybe you get a couple of playoff games at the Wells Fargo Center. But to me, that is not the proper way to go about trying to build a team that is going to be consistently good. And as long as they keep, using these stopgap measures, you're going to take a step forward and then a step back, and then another step back and maybe a half step forward, which is what we've seen for the better part of the last 10 to 15 years.
I'm hungry for some much better hockey. Make sure you guys check out this article on Inquirer.com right now by Mike Sielski, and you can see all the stuff that we're talking about right there and read it for yourself. Let me switch gears because I know you're a man for all season, Mike. What is the difference between Topper, Rob Thomson, and Joe Girardi? What is the difference between these two managers, and why are the Phillies having more success now under Rob Thomson?
I think it's a couple different factors, Rob. Number one, I think it's timing. I'm not saying that's the biggest factor, but it is a factor. Their schedule lightened up a little bit right around the time they fired Girardi. That helped. You can make the argument that some of the guys in the lineup, guys like Kyle Schwarber in particular, were always going to hit at some point, Rhys Hoskins in particular lately. And so the fact that those guys are hitting better has helped. Personally, this is my big takeaway from replacing Joe Girardi with Rob Thomson, is that atmosphere matters. That a Major League Baseball manager's primary job now is to create an atmosphere for a particular kind of club so that that club can succeed. Larry Bowa was mismatched in 2003 and 2004 with the team the Phillies had back then. Veteran laden, Bo's a very intense guy, had everybody walking on eggshells. Wrong kind of demeanor and atmosphere for that kind of team. Charlie Manuel, on the other hand, was perfect for that era of the Phillies when they win the 5 straight division championships in the World Series, because he's got a clubhouse full of guys in Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley and Ryan Howard and some other guys who were tone setters. And Charlie didn't have to have a heavy hand with those guys. I think Girardi, from what I understand and talking to people around the team who I trust, the atmosphere just was not conducive to this team performing as well as it possibly could. I saw a little bit of that with Girardi in New York with the Yankees, where you just felt like if you handed this guy a lump of coal at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the day of a game, by 10 o'clock that night, he would have squeezed it into a diamond. He was that tense. And, I don't think he loosened up at all during his time with the Phillies. And I think Thomson probably creates a better atmosphere for these guys to thrive.
Mm-hmm. It certainly seems like that. We had Garrett Stubbs on a couple of weeks ago, and he was just singing Topper's praises and only calling him Topper. So I feel like we can all call him Topper now. But okay. Switch gears again. I want to go over to the basketball scene. James Harden, greatest teammate ever, turning down $15 million to help this team win now. What do we think about James Harden right about now?
I don't know if he's the greatest teammate ever. I give him credit for realistically evaluating his options and his state in the NBA right now. I wrote this when the Sixers acquired Harden, Mark, that he had to make this work because Daryl Morey respects him and appreciates him more than any other executive in the NBA. So the idea that Harden was going to have it any better anywhere else in the aftermath of being with the Sixers than he would with the Sixers was just completely, it wasn't reality. Nobody else was going to sign him for more money. No other team was going to trade for him unless he was at bargain basement prices. The analogy I would use if you're a movie fan is he was like Richard Gere in An Officer and a Gentleman. I got nowhere else to go. Okay. That was James Harden. And so to me, he has no choice but to take this pay cut and to kind of bend to what the Sixers need and want him to be, which is almost like a point guard, basically. He's not the guy who's going to ISO you to death and score 40 points any night. He's not that guy anymore. And so he's going to take less money and he's going to be a quasi point guard. And the Sixers have to see if he can help them extract more and more from Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey.
So in the vein of Tyrese Maxey then, can Tyrese Maxey step up and be even more of that second scorer behind Joel Embiid, where you have James Harden more as that point guard facilitator and Tyrese Maxey takes a big step forward in terms of points per game, maybe closer to something to 23, 25 points per game, something like that?
I think he can do it, yes. I mean, I think we forget that he's 21 sometimes. Not that he's 21 sometimes. I think we forget sometimes that he's 21. That made it sound like sometimes he's 21, sometimes he's 41. No, but he's on the right track. Everybody understands what a terrific kid he is, what a great attitude he has, how hard he works. They've got a gem in Tyrese Maxey. And so is he going to take that next major step forward this season? I don't know how great the step will be, but I think he will improve. They have to hope that's what's happening here. They have to hope that PJ Tucker gives them toughness and defense and can hit some corner threes because they're in a situation where they have to play the hand that they've dealt themselves.
Two more for you. I got to ask something about football here, and it's Jalen Hurts, because I'm a little nervous here. And it really has nothing to do with Jalen Hurts as of right now. It's more so the reaction to Jalen Hurts. We're not even at training camp, Mike. We're 6 practices in, OTAs in, 2 of which I believe media were actually allowed in to witness some of it. And already we're critiquing this guy over the hill. And it's driving me bonkers already. And like I said, it's not even training camp. It's not even joint practices. It's not even preseason, which I still doubt he'll play in. It's not even week 1. Are we already going overboard with our assessment of Jalen Hurts?
No, we're not. He's the most important player on the roster. And this comes with the territory. And I think you're referring to the report by Derek Gunn, for instance, on Jacob Media about Hurts not practicing well one day. Look,
right.
Gunner's as trusted as anybody who's ever covered the Eagles. If he says that's what's going on inside that building, I believe it totally and completely. The question is, how much do we make out of this? And the fact is that Jalen Hurts is under the microscope this season as much as any player in the NFL. The Eagles did everything they possibly could to improve the team around him. On paper, they have. He is the big X factor. He and Jonathan Gannon, I would suggest, as the defensive coordinator. So there's going to be scrutiny. He's got to deal with it. It's great that his teammates rallied to his defense. I saw what A.J. Brown tweeted and kind of poking fun at Gunner. And I see all the Eagles fans who don't want to hear this right now. Get used to it. This is what it's like playing quarterback in the NFL. This is in particular what it's like playing quarterback in Philadelphia. And if Jalen Hurts can handle it, great. The Eagles are going to have a terrific season. And if he can't, or if he's not good enough, then the Eagles are going to move on. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. And anybody who tells you otherwise, I think, is lying to you.
I agree, my friend. And finally, Kyle Schwarber, National League leader in home runs, agreed to play, or rather bat, in the home run derby, participate in the home run derby. I have the Bobby Abreu syndrome, where all of a sudden he goes on a big tear, and then he's terrible the second half of the season because he loses his swing. Are you at all concerned about that happening to Kyle Schwarber participating in the home run derby?
No, I am not, because the Bobby Abreu perception that you are talking about was canceled out the following season when Ryan Howard participated in the home run derby and went on and had an incredible season. It didn't mess his swing up at all. If anything, he started pulling the ball more often and became an even greater threat. So I am not worried about Kyle Schwarber in the home run derby. Whatever he's drinking, eating, rubbing on himself to get him to hit all these home runs, he should keep doing it because he's the big reason to watch the Phillies right now.
You're absolutely right. And wow, this is something here. Mike Sielski, more optimistic than me. Wow. This is something. No, I'm kidding.
I'm supposed to be the hard-bitten cynic realist here.
Gee, put your pom-poms down, Sielski. God. Anyway. No, and by the way,
cracker, sis, boom, ba. Kyle Schwarber, rah, rah, rah.
Oh, man, I'll be using that for a long time. That's
just God.
We're going to cut that. And we're going to use a lot of that. By the way, you're doing a great job. I hear you on with Glenn every now and again there on WIP. You're doing a great job, brother. And obviously, if you're not reading Mike Sielski, what are you doing, sports fans? You got to be reading Mike Sielski. And, of course, reading his book as well, The Rise. You can find out all things about Kobe Bryant and his pursuit of immortality. Mike, I'll be over soon and get some chocolate, hopefully. So that's, we can have some fun.
Hey, you bring the beer, I'll bring the chocolate. Sounds like a party.
Mike Sielski, Inquirer.com, joining us right here on the Rothman Orthopaedics guest line. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mark.